The Unpaid Ledger. Episode 3. Misplaced. Chapter 1. Here's something they don't tell you about being an adjuster. The worst cases aren't the ones that come looking for you. They're the ones that have been happening for months before anyone notices. Nina Santos was 26 years old. She had a degree in marketing, a job at a mid-sized firm downtown, a boyfriend who made her laugh, and an apartment with a window that caught the morning sun. She had a life. A good one. Then, 6 months before I ever heard her name, it started to fall apart. First, the job. Budget cuts, they said. Her whole department. But somehow, the people who sat next to her landed on their feet within weeks. Nina sent out 200 resumes, got 3 interviews. No offers. Then, the boyfriend. He woke up one morning, looked at her like he was trying to remember why he was there, and said he needed space. Moved out that weekend. Couldn't explain why. Couldn't explain anything. Then, the apartment. A pipe burst. Then, the wiring went bad. Then someone broke in and took nothing but left everything feeling violated. Her landlord started talking about not renewing her lease. Then, her body. Headaches that wouldn't stop. Fatigue that sleep couldn't touch. A cough that lingered for weeks. Nothing the doctors could name, but something was wrong. Something was always wrong. Friends stopped calling. Opportunities dried up. Every door she tried to open stuck, then slammed shut. Bad luck, you might say. Everyone hits rough patches. But this wasn't luck. Luck doesn't work this systematically. Luck doesn't feel like a weight pressing down day after day, grinding a person into dust. This was a cost, landing on someone who'd never earned it. But I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that a kid walked into my office with questions I didn't want to answer, and she wouldn't leave until I listened. I was on my second cup of coffee and my first regret of the day when the door opened without a knock. Eddie looked up from his corner. I looked up from the invoice I was pretending to understand, and a young woman walked in like she owned the place. Early 20s, Chinese American, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing jeans and a jacket that had seen better days. She carried a messenger bag stuffed with papers and the expression of someone who'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times. Mr. Vance? That's what the door says, more or less. I leaned back in my chair. And you are? April Chen. She didn't wait for an invitation, just dropped into the client chair like it was reserved for her. I'm a researcher, independent, and I need your help. I don't do research. I know what you do. She pulled a folder from her bag, set it on my desk. You're an adjuster. You move costs from one place to another. You've been doing it for about a decade, mostly small jobs, occasionally something bigger. Your paperwork is inconsistent, your client list is hard to track, and your outcomes don't always match standard ledger mechanics. Eddie stood up slowly. I didn't look at him, but I felt him move closer. That's a lot of information, I said. Where'd you get it? Public records, auditor filings, some educated guesses. April met my eyes. I'm good at patterns, Mr. Vance, and your pattern is interesting. I'm not interested in being interesting. Too bad. She tapped the folder. I'm not here to expose you or blackmail you or whatever you're thinking. I'm here because my friend is dying, and I think you're the only person who can help her. I glanced at Eddie. He shrugged. His expression said careful, but also hear her out. I'm not a doctor, I said. She doesn't need a doctor. She needs someone who understands costs. April's voice hardened. Someone put something on her that doesn't belong. It's killing her slowly, and no one else will even admit that's possible. What makes you think I can help? Because you've done it before. The Marino case 5 years ago. The thing with Kevin Marsh last month. She leaned forward. You help people, Mr. Vance, even when you pretend you don't. Mother of pearl. This kid had done her homework. Her name is Nina Santos, April said. We were roommates at Ashford University, graduated 2 years ago. She was doing fine, better than fine. Then 6 months ago, everything started falling apart. People have bad stretches. This isn't a bad stretch. This is systematic destruction. April pulled out a timeline, handwritten, covered in notes. Job loss, relationship collapse, health problems that don't have explanations, her apartment falling apart around her, friends disappearing. She looked at me. I've watched it happen, Mr. Vance, week by week. It's not random. It's not natural. Something is feeding on her. Feeding? Wrong word. Something is landing on her. Costs that aren't hers. I can't prove it, but I know I'm right. I picked up the timeline, looked at the dates, the events, the careful handwriting of someone who cared too much to give up. You're not an adjuster, I said. No. How do you even know this world exists? April hesitated. First crack in her armor. My grandmother. She knew things. Talked about balance, about debts that followed people. I thought she was superstitious until I started seeing the patterns myself. She shrugged. I've been researching for 3 years. You're not the first adjuster I've found. You're just the first one who might actually help. What happened to the others? One laughed at me. One threatened me. One said what's happening to Nina is impossible and told me to leave. April's jaw tightened. I'm not leaving this time. Eddie drifted closer, spoke quietly, just to me. She's telling the truth, or she believes she is. I looked at the timeline again. 6 months of slow collapse. If April was right, if someone had deliberately placed costs on an innocent person, that was as ugly as the job got. I'm not promising anything, I said. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking you to look. I should have said no. I had enough problems. Miriam Tate circling, Aldrich lurking in the background, my own debts piling up in places I couldn't see. But April Chin was staring at me with the same look I'd seen in the mirror 100 times. The look of someone who knew something was wrong and refused to pretend otherwise. Fine, I said. I'll look. But if I find out you're wasting my time, I'm not. April stood up, already reaching for her bag. When can we start? We? She's my friend, Mr. Vance. I'm not sitting this out. I looked at Eddie. He almost smiled. Great, I said. Just what I needed. A partner. Associate, April corrected. Partners implies trust. We're not there yet. She had a point. Chapter 2. April gave me an address in the Riverside district. Not the nice part. The part where the rent was cheap because the buildings were old and the landlords had stopped pretending to care. She sat in the passenger seat of my car, flipping through her notes. Eddie was in the back, invisible to her, watching with the expression of someone reserving judgment. So, April said without looking up, the dead guy who follows you around, is he going to be a problem? I nearly drove into a mailbox. Excuse me? I told you I'm good at patterns. She finally looked at me. You talk to empty corners. You pause before answering like you're listening to someone. And there's a cold spot in your office that moves. She shrugged. I figured either you're haunted or you're crazy. Haunted seemed more useful. Eddie leaned forward. I like her. You would. April raised an eyebrow. He's here now? Back seat. And he's not a ghost. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. She went back to her notes. Can he help with Nina? He can sense costs. Might be useful. Good enough. She pointed ahead. Turn left here. Building's the gray one with the fire escape that looks like it's giving up on life. I turned. The building came into view. April wasn't wrong about the fire escape. What am I walking into? I asked. 6 months of slow destruction wearing a human face. April's voice was quieter now. She's not the person I knew anymore, Mr. Vance. Something's eating her alive. I just need you to see it. The hallway smelled like mildew and resignation. Flickering lights, stained carpet. The kind of building where complaints went to die. Nina's apartment was on the 3rd floor. April knocked. 3 soft taps, a pause, then 2 more. A code, maybe. Or just habit. The door opened a crack. An eye peered out, bloodshot and suspicious. It's me, April said. I brought someone who can help. The door opened wider. Nina Santos looked like a photograph left in the sun too long. Faded, washed out. She was 26, but she moved like someone decades older, shuffling back to let us in with the careful steps of a person who'd learned that the world wanted to trip her. The apartment was worse than the hallway. Water stains on the ceiling, cracks in the walls that hadn't been there 6 months ago, I'd bet. A lamp in the corner flickered constantly, not quite dying, not quite living. The air felt heavy, thick, like breathing through wet cloth. Nina, this is Sam Vance, April said. He's a specialist. Nina looked at me. There was nothing in her eyes. Not hope, not fear, not even curiosity, just exhaustion. Another one? Her voice was flat. The last specialist told me to try yoga. I'm not that kind of specialist. What kind are you? I looked around the apartment, felt the weight pressing down on every surface. Eddie had stopped at the threshold, his form flickering. Sam, he said quietly, this is bad, really bad. I knew. I could feel it. Cost saturated this place, saturated her, like water soaking into wood. But they were wrong, misaligned. They didn't fit the shape of her life. The kind who deals with what's actually happening to you, I said, not what people think is happening. Nina stared at me for a long moment. Then something cracked in her expression. Just a little. Just enough. April said you might believe me. I don't need to believe you. I can see it. I stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Something's been placed on you. Costs that don't belong to you. They've been grinding you down for months. Nina's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was going crazy. You're not crazy. You're targeted. And I'm going to find out by who. I asked Nina if I could touch her hand. She hesitated, then nodded. The moment my fingers made contact, I felt it. A current running the wrong direction. Costs that had been pushed onto her, rooted into her life like weeds choking a garden. They didn't match her. Wrong texture, wrong weight, wrong everything. It was like reading someone else's handwriting in her ledger. This isn't yours, I said. None of it. What do you mean? Costs have signatures, patterns. These don't fit you. They belong to someone else, someone who paid to have them moved. I let go of her hand. Someone used you as a dumping ground. Nina sank onto her couch, what was left of it. Springs groaned in protest. Why me? That's what I'm going to find out. April was watching me with sharp eyes. You can really see it? The costs? Feel it. It's like I searched for words that would make sense to someone outside the work, like hearing a song in the wrong key. Everything about it is off. Can you fix it? I can move it, but costs don't disappear. They have to land somewhere. I looked at Nina, at the wreckage of her life pressed into every corner of this apartment. The question is where they're supposed to be, who they actually belong to. How do we find that out? I thought about the weight I'd felt. Heavy, dense, the kind of cost that came from something serious. Not bad luck or minor debts. Something big. These costs are significant. Someone paid a lot to make them go away. That means money. Connections. The kind of people who think they can buy their way out of consequences. I headed for the door. We start by finding out who in Ashford has that kind of money and something to hide. April grabbed her bag, ready to follow. I have some ideas. Of course you do. Nina stood up, swaying slightly. What do I do? I turned back. She looked so small, so tired. 6 months of carrying weight that should never have been hers. You wait, I said, and you hold on. I'm going to find who did this, and I'm going to put things back where they belong. It wasn't a promise. I don't make promises. But it was close. Chapter 3. We set up in my office. April spread her papers across my desk like a general planning a campaign. Eddie watched from his corner, occasionally drifting closer to look at something that caught his attention. I've been working this for 3 months, April said. Ever since I realized Nina's problems weren't random. 3 months is a long time to chase something you couldn't prove. She's my friend. April said it like that explained everything. Maybe it did. She pulled out a map of Ashford with pins stuck in various locations. Red string connected some of them. It looked like the wall of a conspiracy theorist, which wasn't exactly reassuring. I tracked Nina's incidents geographically, she said. The job loss, the boyfriend, the apartment problems. Then I looked for patterns. Find any? 1. She tapped a cluster of pins on the east side of the map. Everything started after she walked through this intersection. 6 months ago, on her way home from work. She mentioned it once, said she felt dizzy, like she'd stepped through something cold. Thought she was getting sick. Eddie moved closer. She walked through a placement. That's what I figured. April looked at me. Someone was dumping costs in that area. Nina just happened to be the nearest anchor point. That's not how it usually works, I said. Placements are targeted. You don't just throw costs into the wind and hope they land on someone. Unless you don't care who they land on. April's voice was hard. Unless the point was just to get rid of them, and whoever caught them was acceptable collateral. I thought about that. About the kind of person who'd treat a stranger's life as a dumping ground. So we need to find out what happened 6 months ago that someone wanted to disappear. Something big enough to justify this kind of placement. April smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Already started. She pulled out another folder. Let me show you what money can't quite hide. April's research was thorough. Obsessively thorough. She'd pulled news archives, police blotters, hospital records, things that shouldn't have been public but somehow were. 6 months ago, she said, flipping pages, I looked for incidents involving wealthy families. Anything that might generate the kind of cost Nina's carrying. What kind of cost is that? Heavy. You said it yourself. Significant. That means injury or death. Something with real weight. Eddie leaned over my shoulder. She's good. She's terrifying, I muttered. April ignored us both. I found 3 possibilities. A boating accident on the river. 2 injured, 1 family paid out of court. A construction incident downtown. Worker fell. Company settled quickly. And this. She laid a newspaper clipping on the desk. The headline read, Pedestrian killed in hit and run, driver unknown. 6 months ago, corner of Bleecker and Fifth, a woman named Maria Vega, 43, walking home from her night shift. Driver fled the scene. Case is still technically open, but there's been no progress. Hit and run is a crime. The cops would investigate. They did, for about 2 weeks. Then the case went cold. April pulled out another sheet. But here's the thing. 3 days after Maria Vega died, Bradley Carver, age 24, son of Richard Carver of Carver Development, checked into a private rehabilitation facility in Connecticut. Alcohol-related issues, according to the intake, I probably shouldn't have gotten access to. Eddie whistled. Carver Development. That's old money. Very old. April nodded. Richard Carver's grandfather built half the industrial district. They've got buildings, politicians, connections, the kind of family where problems get solved before they become public. I looked at the clipping. Maria Vega, 43. Someone's mother, probably. Someone's daughter. Dead on a street corner because a rich kid couldn't handle his liquor. You think Bradley Carver killed Maria Vega, and his family paid to make the cost disappear? I think he killed her, and they paid an adjuster to dump the consequences on someone who wouldn't be missed. April's voice was steady, but her hands were tied on the edge of the desk. Nina was nobody to them, just a random person who walked through the wrong intersection at the wrong time. Can you prove it? Not in any way that would hold up in court, but you don't need court, do you? She looked at me. You need to find the adjuster who did the placement. They'll have records, proof of who paid them. She was right. The adjuster was the key. Any idea who it was? 1. April pulled out a final page. A name, an address, a photo of a man in his 50s with a forgettable face. Vincent Cobb, independent adjuster, worked mostly for corporate clients, specialized in high-value placements. Specialized in making rich people's problems disappear, you mean? Same thing. April slid the page toward me. There's just one problem. He's dead. I stared at the page, at Vincent Cobb's unremarkable face. When? 2 months ago. Heart attack, according to the death certificate. Found in his apartment by a neighbor who noticed the smell. April's voice was flat. Very convenient timing. 2 months? I did the math. That's 4 months after he placed the costs on Nina. Long enough for the job to settle. Long enough for him to become a loose end. You think he was killed? I think heart attacks can be arranged if you know the right people or the right adjusters. I looked at Eddie. You ever hear of Vincent Cobb? Eddie shook his head. Name doesn't ring a bell, but I can ask around. The community's small. Someone will know him. Do it. He faded out, heading to do whatever Eddie did when he went looking for information. April was watching me. You think whoever hired Cobb killed him too? I think someone's cleaning up. Cobb did the placement, got paid, and then became the only person who could connect the Carvers to what happened. I stood up, moved to the window, looked out at the brick wall that was my only view. Dead men don't testify. So we've got no proof. We've got a pattern, a victim, a beneficiary, and a dead adjuster in between. I turned back to her. That's enough for me to move forward. The question is what we do with it. We put the costs back where they belong. April's voice was certain. On Bradley Carver. It's not that simple. The costs have been rooting in Nina for 6 months. They've settled. Pulling them out is going to hurt. And leaving them will kill her. She wasn't wrong. I thought about Vincent Cobb, about the convenient heart attack, about the Carvers sitting in their mansion, thinking they'd gotten away with murder twice over. Once on the street, once in Nina's slow destruction. And I thought about Aldrich, about Ray Marsh, about a pattern of adjusters doing dirty work for people with money and ending up dead. There's something bigger here, I said. Cobb isn't the first adjuster to die after a questionable job. I've been seeing this pattern for months. What kind of pattern? Someone organizing placements that shouldn't be made. Costs dumped on innocents, evidence cleaned up, adjusters eliminated. I met her eyes. We fixed Nina. That's first. But this connects to something larger. Something I've been trying to find for a while. April absorbed that. Then let's fix Nina and pull on the thread. You're not going to let this go, are you? Would you? I almost smiled. No, I said. I wouldn't. Chapter 4. Eddie came back 2 hours later. April had gone out for coffee. Real coffee, not the sludge I kept in my office. And I was alone when he materialized by the window. Found something, he said. Good something or bad something? When is it ever good? He drifted to the chair April had vacated, settled into it like he could still feel tired. Vincent Cobb was connected. Not just a freelancer taking dirty jobs. He was on someone's payroll. Regular payments, same source, going back at least 3 years. Who? That's where it gets murky. The payments came through a shell company. But I talked to an adjuster named Helen Price. She worked with Cobb a few times. Said he used to brag about having a patron. Someone who kept him busy, kept him paid, and kept him out of trouble. Until trouble found him anyway. Yeah. Eddie's expression was grim. Helen said Cobb mentioned a name once. Just once, when he'd had too much to drink. Said his patron was connected to Aldrich, whatever that means. Aldrich again. Ray Marsh's files. The pattern I kept seeing but couldn't quite grasp. Someone's running an operation, I said. Organizing adjusters to do placements that shouldn't be made. Cobb was part of it. So was Ray Marsh. And they both ended up dead. Loose ends. I rubbed my eyes. Whoever Aldrich is, they're cleaning house, making sure no one can connect the dots. Which means we're pulling on a thread that someone doesn't want pulled. We knew that already. I stood up, moved to the window. But first, we fix Nina, one problem at a time. And then we keep pulling. April came back with coffee and questions. I answered the second while drinking the first. Moving rooted costs isn't like moving fresh ones, I explained. Fresh costs are loose. They want to land somewhere, and you're just directing traffic. Rooted costs have settled in. They've made a home. Pulling them out is like pulling weeds that have had 6 months to grow. It's going to hurt Nina. Yes. Not permanently, I hope, but she's going to feel it. The costs have been part of her life for half a year. Her body, her circumstances, her relationships. When I pull them out, it's going to feel like losing something, even though what she's losing is poison. April was quiet for a moment. And Bradley Carver? He's the rightful owner. The costs belong to him. When I move them, they'll settle into his life the way they settled into Nina's, but faster, because they'll recognize the fit. What does that mean for him? I thought about how to answer, about what April needed to understand before we did this. It means the consequences of killing Maria Vega will finally land. His health will suffer. His relationships will strain. His luck will turn. Everything that's been grinding Nina down will grind him down instead. Will it kill him? Probably not. Death costs usually want to land as death, but these have been diluted by time and distance. He'll suffer. He'll lose things. But he'll likely survive. I met her eyes. Likely. Not certainly. April didn't flinch. He killed someone. He's been living his life while Nina's has been destroyed, while Maria Vega's family has been grieving with no answers. I know. So we do it. We do it, but not blind. I want to see him first. Know who I'm pointing this at. Why? Because this job makes you into something if you're not careful. I've seen adjusters who stopped looking at the targets, stopped caring who paid and who received. They become tools. I shook my head. I'm not a tool. I make choices, and I make them with my eyes open. The Carver family owned a townhouse in the Meridian district. Old brick, iron railings, the kind of understated wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Bradley lived in the guest house out back, his own little kingdom, courtesy of Daddy's money. We parked across the street, waited, watched. He came out around 6 in the evening. Tall, athletic, the kind of good-looking that came from personal trainers and dermatologists. He wore clothes that cost more than my monthly rent and walked with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. A woman met him at the gate, blonde, pretty, laughing at something he said. They got into a car, new, expensive, probably a graduation gift, and drove away. Date night, maybe. Dinner at some restaurant where the portions were small and the prices weren't listed. That's him, April said. That's the guy who killed Maria Vega and ruined Nina's life. That's him. I watched the car disappear around a corner. Thought about Nina in her crumbling apartment, too tired to hope. Thought about Maria Vega's family, still waiting for justice that would never come through normal channels. Bradley Carver had never faced a consequence in his life. His family had made sure of that. When he made a mistake, someone else paid. When he broke something, someone else cleaned it up. Not this time. We do it tomorrow, I said. I need to prepare, and Nina needs to know what's coming. I'll tell her. Tell her it's going to hurt. Tell her it's going to feel wrong, even though it's right. I started the car, and tell her that when it's over, she gets her life back, what's left of it. April nodded. Her jaw was set, her eyes hard. She'd come to me with a problem, and now she was part of the solution, part of the ugly math that balanced the ledger. Mr. Vance? Sam. She almost smiled. Sam, thank you for doing this. Don't thank me yet. I pulled away from the curb, leaving the Carver townhouse behind. Thank me when it's done. Tomorrow, Bradley Carver would learn that some debts can't be bought off, and Nina Santos would finally stop paying for someone else's sins. Chapter 5. Nina was waiting for us when we arrived. She'd cleaned, or tried to. The apartment still felt heavy, saturated with wrongness, but someone had straightened the cushions and wiped down the counters. A small act of hope, or maybe defiance. April told me what's going to happen, she said. Her voice was steadier than yesterday. She said it's going to hurt. It is. I didn't see the point in lying. The costs have been part of you for 6 months. Pulling them out is going to feel like losing something, even though what I'm losing is killing me. Even though Nina nodded. She was sitting on her couch, hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than anyone should look in their own home. What do I need to do? Stay still. Stay calm. Let me work. I pulled a chair over, sat across from her. I'm going to hold your hands. You're going to feel a pulling sensation, like something being drawn out through your skin. Don't fight it. The more you resist, the more it hurts. And when it's over, you'll feel empty for a while. Lighter, but hollow. That's normal. The costs have been filling space in your life, and now that space will be vacant. I met her eyes. It'll fill back up with things that are actually yours, but it takes time. April stood by the door watching. Eddie was by the window, keeping lookout for anything unusual. The morning sun tried to push through the grimy glass, painting everything in shades of gray and gold. I'm ready, Nina said. You sure? I've been ready for 6 months. I just didn't know what I was ready for. She held out her hands. Do it. I took her hands in mine, closed my eyes, and reached for the wrongness that had made its home inside her. The costs didn't want to leave. They'd settled deep, roots threading through every corner of Nina's life. I could feel them wrapped around her health, her luck, her relationships, parasitic vines choking a garden. Pulling them was like pulling teeth, each one resisting, clinging. Nina gasped. Her hands tightened on mine. Breathe, I said. Just breathe. I pulled harder. The first cost came loose, a tendril of misfortune that had been tangled around her career. It snapped free with a sensation like tearing fabric, and Nina made a sound that was half sob, half relief. More. I reached deeper, found the cost that had wound around her body, the headaches, the fatigue, the mysterious ailments that doctors couldn't name. I grabbed them and pulled. Nina cried out. Her whole body shuddered. Sam, Eddie's voice tense. She's fading. I know. Almost there. The deepest cost was the hardest. Maria Vega's death diluted and spread through Nina's life like poison in groundwater. It didn't want to leave. It had found a home, and it resisted with something that felt almost like intention. I pulled anyway. The cost came free with a rush of cold that made my teeth ache. For a moment, I felt what Nina had been carrying, the weight of a woman's death, the grief of a family that would never have answers, the casual cruelty of a boy who'd driven away and never looked back. I held it, all of it, costs that didn't belong to me, suspended in the gap between source and target. Nina slumped forward. I caught her, eased her back against the couch. She was pale, shaking, but her eyes were clearer than they'd been since I met her. Is it gone? She whispered. It's gone. I stood up, my legs unsteady. The costs churned inside me, foreign and angry, looking for somewhere to land. Now, I have to finish this. April was at Nina's side instantly, checking her pulse, brushing hair from her face. She okay? She will be. I headed for the door. Stay with her. I'll be back. Sam. April's voice stopped me. Make him pay. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Bradley Carver went to the gym every morning at 10. April had tracked his routine, part of her obsessive research. The gym was upscale, private, the kind of place where membership cost more than some people's rent. I waited outside. The costs churned inside me, restless, wanting release. I could feel them pressing against my edges, looking for cracks. This wasn't like moving fresh costs, where I was just directing traffic. This was holding someone else's poison and trying not to let it seep in. Bradley came out at 11:15, gym bag over his shoulder, phone in hand, laughing at something on the screen. Probably a text from last night's date. Probably plans for tonight's. He walked right past me. I reached out, brushed his arm. Just a touch, casual, accidental, the kind of contact that happens a dozen times a day in a city. But I wasn't casual, and it wasn't accidental. I pushed. The costs flowed out of me like water finding a drain. They recognized him. the shape of his choices, the weight of what he'd done. Maria Vega's death, finally finding its way home. 6 months of grinding destruction transferred in the space of a heartbeat. Bradley stumbled, caught himself on a parking meter, looked around, confused, like he'd been hit by something he couldn't see. "You okay, man?" someone asked. "Yeah, He shook his head. "Just dizzy. I'm fine." He wasn't fine. He'd never be fine again. Not the way he was before. I walked away. Didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Bradley coughing. A deep, racking cough that hadn't been there a minute ago. The first crack in his charmed life. More would follow. The costs would settle into him the way they'd settled into Nina. His health would falter. His relationships would strain. His luck would sour. Everything his father's money had protected him from would come due, all at once, interest compounding. He wouldn't die. Probably. But he'd suffer. He'd lose things he thought he'd have forever. He'd learn what it felt like to be ground down by forces he couldn't understand or control. Justice? Maybe. Balance? Definitely. I didn't feel good about it. I never did. But I felt right. And that would have to be enough. Chapter 6. Nina was sitting up when I got back, color in her cheeks, light in her eyes. She looked like someone waking from a long fever, weak but present. "It worked," she said. Not a question. It worked. April was beside her, holding a glass of water, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Relief, maybe. Or the beginning of something more complicated. "I feel—" Nina paused, searching for words. "Empty. Like you said. But it's a good empty. Clean. It'll fill back up. Give it time." I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly aware of how tired I was. Moving rooted costs took something out of you, more than the usual work. Your luck will turn. Slowly at first, then faster. Things that were stuck will start moving. Doors that were closed will open. And the guy who did this to me? He's paying now, the way you are paying. Nina was quiet for a moment. I waited for the question. Would he die? Did I kill him? Is this justice or revenge? The questions people always asked when they realized what I'd done on their behalf. But she didn't ask. She just nodded. Good. Maybe she'd feel differently later, when the hollow feeling faded and she had room to think about what had happened. But right now, she was alive and free, and that was enough. "What do I do now?" she asked. "Live, rebuild, find a new apartment. This one's soaked in bad memories." I pushed off the doorframe. "And if anything strange starts happening again, call April. She knows how to reach me." "Thank you, Mr. Vance." "Sam." Nina smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. "Thank you, Sam." We walked out together, April and I. The sun was high now, burning off the morning haze, making Riverside look almost livable. Eddie drifted beside us, invisible to passers-by, watching April with something like respect. "You did something back there," April said, "when you were holding the costs, before you put them on Bradley." "I held them. That's what adjusters do." "No, it was more than that." She stopped walking, turned to face me. "I've been researching this world for 3 years. I know how transfers work. Touch source, touch target, push. But you held those costs inside you for over an hour. That's not normal. I'm good at my job. You're different." Her eyes were sharp, probing. "The costs I tracked in your files, some of them don't land. They go through you and disappear. I thought it was a record-keeping error, but it's not, is it?" I didn't answer. "What are you, Sam?" "An adjuster, same as any other." "Liar." She said it without heat. A statement of fact. "But that's okay. You don't have to tell me. Not yet." "There's not going to be a yet. Case is closed. Nina's fine. We're done." April laughed. It was short, sharp, and entirely unconvinced. "You're investigating something. Aldrich, Vincent Cobb, the pattern of dead adjusters. You mentioned it yourself. This connects to something bigger. She started walking again. I'm good at research. I'm patient. And I don't have anywhere else to be. I'm not taking on an apprentice. Good. I'm not looking for a teacher. She glanced at me. I'm looking for answers. Same as you. We can look separately, or we can look together. Together's more efficient. Eddie materialized between us, grinning. I really like her. You would, I muttered. April raised an eyebrow. Eddie agrees with me? Eddie has questionable judgment. Eddie thinks you need someone watching your back who isn't dead. Eddie's grin widened. Just saying. I walked in silence for a block. 2. April kept pace, not pushing, just waiting. I'm not paying you, I finally said. Didn't ask you to? And if things get dangerous, you're out. No arguments. Define dangerous. April. She held up her hands. Fine. If things get dangerous, we discuss it like adults. Deal? It wasn't a deal. It was the beginning of something I'd probably regret. Deal? I said anyway. I dropped April at a bus stop near the university. She had research to do, she said, following up on Vincent Cobb's connections, pulling threads. I drove back to my office alone. Well, alone except for Eddie. You're collecting people, he said. I'm not collecting anything. Derek. Now April. Pretty soon you'll have a whole team. I have you. That's enough trouble for one adjuster. Eddie was quiet for a moment. The radio crackled. Static. A fragment of voice. Then nothing. The Aldrich thing, he said. It's getting bigger. I know. Cobb was connected. So was Ray Marsh. And now we've got Vincent Cobb dead, Ray Marsh dead, and a whole network of dirty placements we're just starting to uncover. Eddie's voice was serious now. Someone's been running this operation for years, and we keep stumbling into the edges of it. Which means eventually we'll stumble into the center. That worries me. It should. I parked outside my building, sat in the car, engine off, staring at nothing. Nina Santos was free. Bradley Carver was paying. Maria Vega's death had finally found its rightful owner. By any measure, the job was done. But the threads kept multiplying. Aldrich, the dead adjusters, Miriam Tate, circling closer with every irregularity I left in my wake. And underneath it all, the question I still couldn't answer. Where did my costs go when they vanished? The collector had asked. Eddie kept asking. Sooner or later, I'd have to find out. But not today. Today, I'd helped someone who needed helping. Today, a woman who'd been used as a dumping ground got her life back. Today, the balance tipped towards something like justice. It wasn't much, but in my line of work, you measure victories in inches. The radio crackled again. Static. Silence. Then, just for a moment, something that sounded almost like a voice. I left it on. I always did.